Today we're going to explore the emotional values of color and shape. In most cases, when you're doing something like a landscape and you're painting the sky, you paint it blue because you know the sky is blue. But what color would you paint the sky if you wanted to give an emotional value to the painting of something that was maybe scary or foreboding, or maybe something that was extra happy? You could use a different color in the sky. Many artists do, particularly the Fauvists like Henri Matisse. You could paint it orange or yellow. It doesn't have to be blue just because we know it's blue. So using colors and shapes for emotional value is something that a lot of artists do, and we're going to explore that now. And there are some truths about these things that are internationally known. So if you're walking along a path outside your home and you look down and you see some red on the ground, you wouldn't think, oh, somebody maybe spilled some jello. You're going to be kind of shocked and worried that it might be blood. And this would be true if you're in Tibet on the top of a mountain, or you're in the jungles of Brazil, or out in the plains of Africa. If you're walking along and in your path you see some red, you're going to be alarmed and shocked. And this is something that goes back to our primal nature as human beings. There are going to be certain emotional values that are attached to colors and shapes because of our own human experience. And these are the things that I've collected in a book called The Emotional Color Wheel. So it explores colors and shapes from an international sort of perspective. And if you have your Art Students Workbook, we're going to take some notes on this so that you can apply it to your next art project and future projects. In there, you're going to find a page that you can fill in that's called The Emotional Values of Shapes and Colors. And it's got two things to fill in for each shape and color. And that's going to be an association. That's the thing that you immediately connect with a particular shape or color. And then an emotional value, which then becomes the expressive part of it. So we'll start off with our shapes because that's the very easiest one to think about. And I'll project some ideas over here to kind of help you through and understand. But when we talk about shapes, there are three basic shapes: the triangle, the circle, and the square. The triangle is the one that's going to be associated with like scissors, broken glass, a spear, a knife, or the teeth on a saw, because those are triangular. So those are going to be our associations, at least a few of them. And then we need to think about the emotional values. And there isn't a giant jump in this, but you need to think a little bit. If a knife was coming towards you, like somebody threw it, how would you feel? And the feelings or the emotions that would kind of bubble up are going to be fear, danger. Maybe the person throwing it is feeling rage. So these are exaggerated kind of emotions that are going to be emotional values that are tied to a triangle. If you knew somebody that was very angry and full of rage, instead of doing a painting of them making an angry face, you could represent them with a triangular shape, a triangular pattern, or a triangular line, so that you can express things on an emotional level, a symbolic level, without having to be very literal about it. We can move on to the next shape, which is going to be a circle. And circles, you can see, are associated with a balloon, a hula hoop, a frisbee, a sports ball, a bubble. These are things that are going to be circular, and you might remember them as being kind of fun objects, things that are playful, things that are energetic, and they're safe. And you could certainly make emotional values of people and say that a person is fun, energetic, playful. All of those kinds of things are associated with circles. So you could use a circle to represent someone that was like that. We could go on to the square and think of it as a box. And some associations with that would be a box, blocks, a shelf, stairs, desk, chairs, a house. And all of these things are associations, and then the emotional values are that they're useful, they're stable, they're strong, they're dependable, and you could certainly have people in your life that are like that. Now, if you ended up getting a nice box for your birthday, you wouldn't be excited about it. It'd be kind of a boring gift. It'd be functional, you could use it, but it wouldn't be exciting. So that would be another emotional value, boring, that you might associate with something like that. So if you knew somebody in your life who was strong and dependable, but maybe a little bit boring, you could use a square or a square-based line or pattern to represent that person. Now we can make combinations of shapes because every shape in the universe is some sort of combination of triangle, circle, and square. And if you have your workbook, I'd like you to take a moment and look at the next page and draw out a shape or shape combination that represents you. If you feel like you're a very simple person, you can keep your shape simple. But if you're a very complex person, then you can make your shape more complex. This was my shape, and it's a combination of circles and squares. Circles because I generally am soft-spoken and playful and like to have fun. And square-based because as a teacher I need to be dependable and that what I see I need to grade in a fair kind of way. And so that is definitely part of my personality. You don't see any triangle in there really because I'm not a yeller. I'm not one of those teachers that's always yelling across the room at their students, giving out lots of detentions. After 30 years of teaching, I know how to manage my class without having to raise my voice. So I didn't include triangles there. What would your shape look like? You could pause this video and go ahead and draw that, and then we'll continue. So we will continue on to colors. And the color I mentioned early on was red. There's another thing that's red internationally, and that's going to be stop signs. Stop signs all around the world are red. And that's going back to that primal idea of blood, that it's shocking. It grabs your attention. You notice it right away. If you go into a room full of lots of colors, you're going to notice the red first because it is something primal and deep within our consciousness. So when we look at red, we're going to have certain associations. So one of them, again, was blood. So you could write that one down. Or a fire truck, a hydrant, danger signs, that there would be imminent danger. Like this do not enter sign. If you do enter that way, you could be in a crash. So it needs to be a sign that really grabs your attention. So they use red. Could you also say that a person is full of rage, anger, dangerous? You need to be warned before they enter the room? Certainly. So you could use red to kind of represent that person. You'll see that red and triangles are now associated with each other a little bit here. So in the cover of my book, you could see that I put red and the triangle kind of associated with each other because they have a lot that is in common. If you're going to say a sport was related to red, that might be boxing because the point is to knock somebody out when you get in the ring. So it's a very aggressive sort of sport. We can move to the next color now, and that's orange. And some of the associations you can see here are like a scary pumpkin, a hot stove burner, a traffic cone, or a warning sign. Slow down because there are things you need to pay attention to. Well, the best association, I think, is really that hot stove burner. It really encapsulates what I mean by orange. So when we have a hot stove burner and there's a little kid around, you generally warn them, don't touch that because they could get hurt. But we have the hot stove burner because it serves a purpose. It can make food. It can make nourishment for ourselves. So it has a lot of energy, and that energy can be transcribed into our food, and then we can eat it. You could take a raw piece of pork, which could almost be poisonous, and you got to cook it up, and that'll neutralize anything that's bad in the meat, and then you can go ahead and eat it. So it does serve a purpose. It's useful, but it's high energy. So if you wanted to say that somebody was very, very energetic, somebody you should be cautious around, but maybe not afraid, orange would be a color that you could use for that. So some of those emotional values are going to be high energy, caution, maybe aggressive, somebody who's a little bit more in your face. So that would be the association. If you're going to say a sport is kind of associated with orange, I would say tackle football. People can get hurt in the game, but that's not really the point of the game. We're going to move ahead to yellow. And yellow, almost internationally, is associated with the sun. We know the sun gives off white light. We understand that. But in most cultures, yellow seems to be the color that they represent as the sun, along with lemons or attention signs. They're not like warning, it's like pay attention. flowers, these kinds of things. So yellow is associated with the sun, which is very life-giving. And now we get into those emotional values with these associations. The sun being life-giving, warm, gentle, nurturing, because it's going to be giving us life. You need the energy, the vitamin D from the sun. Playful, when you see the sun outside, you want to go outside and play. So these are all emotional values that would be associated with yellow. You'll see that they're also connected with the circle. And then on the cover of my book, again, we've got the circle and yellow are kind of connected to each other. We're going to move on to green. Oh, but if we're going to say a sport for yellow, I would say baseball. It's got a lot of energy. Generally, people don't get hurt. So when we go on to green, we need to think about things like grass, trees, vegetables, kelp, all of those kinds of things. So what do they have in common? Well, they're all growing. So growth is an emotional value, somebody who helps you grow or you are growing. Vegetables is a great one for green because they're nurturing, nourishing, lots of vitamins, they're good for you. And all of these are emotional values because we know people around us who are good for us, that help us grow, that nurture us. It doesn't quite have the energy of yellow. You can't just watch grass grow. You can observe that it grows over a week or so, but you don't just sit there and watch it grow in front of your eyes. So it's a low energy, cool sort of color. So if you're going to do a sport that's going to be connected to this, maybe croquet or badminton, something simple that would be associated with a low energy kind of sport. Our next color is blue, and blue is going to be, number one, associated with the sky, which is really vast and almost everlasting. You almost can't see where does it end except at the edge of the land. Then you have the ocean, lakes, and rivers, and other large bodies of water. So it's cool. These are other emotional values that we associate with these things. So cool, calm, water is necessary for us to live, so it becomes a life-giving sort of color. It's vast, it seems to go on forever. So it's another one of those colors that kind of has these big, deep feelings sort of behind it. So if you had somebody in your life who was very deep in the way that they thought, somebody who was very calm, because this has even less energy than green. I would say if you're going to do a sport that's connected to this, it isn't a sport anymore. It might be cards or checkers or chess. So it's very low energy kind of color, but it's nurturing and it's a very important color in our lives, certainly those associations. Then we can move on to purple, which is associated with royalty, sunsets, the deepest part of the ocean before you can't see anymore, or maybe the vastness of space. This is going to be the most calm color of all of our colors. It's almost so calm it becomes like a coma. So the energy level of this is like a nap. But we've got this association with royalty and the idea of being dignified and very deep and very still and maybe not judgmental. It's something that's very open to possibilities. So if you know somebody who's kind of like that, purple would be a good color to use to kind of represent it. That sense of royalty. Maybe there's a grandmother in the family that everybody goes to for advice because she knows it all and is very wise. Purple might be a perfect color for that kind of person. Or maybe even a color of somebody who's shy and a little bit withdrawn and is a little bit on the quiet side. Purple might also represent that. But the colors aren't limited to the spectrum. We have hundreds of colors and colors between colors, but we're going to go over a few key ones for the rest of this. So black. Black can be associated with darkness, a cave, charcoal, the deep dark woods. So we have this sense of darkness or the unknown. And emotionally, if I closed up the windows and blocked out all the light, we would see black or darkness. It isn't really a color of something scary, like a scary movie or something, but it's really the color of the unknown. When things are dark and you're trying to feel your way through the darkness, it isn't so much fear as you're a little unnerved. It is representing the unknown. So I'd like you to get rid of that idea that black is somehow a bad color. It's really the color of the unknown, the unexpected, the mystery. So if somebody is coming at you and they're very angry, and then you don't know why, black might be a good color to associate with that anger. So you've got a red and a black next to each other. Black also operates as like an exclamation point. When you put one color next to black, it makes that color stand out even more. So if you wanted to enhance the emotions of something, black could be a color that you could use with it. It can also be the color of something that's like magical, mysterious. So if you don't know where anger is coming from, then black would be a good color to kind of represent that. The next one is going to be white. So we've got associations with clouds, foam, fog, ice, and snow. And these things are all emotionally cold. They're emotionally pure because there's nothing in it. You know, a white piece of paper that you're ready to draw on has nothing on it. So it's pure, it's innocent. We have those kinds of associations with white. Also, internationally, white is associated with spirits or ghosts. And it's not kind of the fearful ghost type of thing, but it's going to be this idea of spirits around us. And many cultures represent spirits with white, a white mist, a white fog, you know, the traditional white ghost you see on Halloween. So it's not a color of, you know, evil or, you know, spirits in that way. It's more the sense of spirituality can be represented by white. So if you wanted to represent somebody who is a very faithful sort of person, or somebody who's very innocent, or even somebody who doesn't know very much, white can be a color that can be used in those different kinds of ways. In between black and white, we're going to have gray. And gray has a couple of different meanings. It's going to be associated with stone and structures that are made with stone, like granite. And that's gray, it's dark, it's hard, and it's something that's very strong, but it is kind of cold. So emotional values could be strong and cold, sort of like a severe, stern sort of person. But it can also have a different thing where it's not black, it's not white. It's sort of the in-between. It can represent somebody who is indecisive or can't quite make up their mind. We're not kind of sure where they stand on an issue. Are they really a friend? Are they not? Gray might be a good color for that. So it's that indecisiveness. Brown, sometimes people jump right to, oh, brown is dirty, but you really need to get away from that and think about the idea of farming. That's going to be the greatest association for brown to really understand it well, because it's representing the earth, bark, leather, seeds. These are all things that are generally associated with farmers and hard work. Hardworking is a great association for brown. Also, potential. There's a lot of potential in the earth. When you plow the earth and it's all brown and fresh, you can put seeds into it and grow things to nurture a community, or you can pour pesticides and poisons into it and then kind of ruin the land for generations. But the land itself has potential. So brown is a great color for potential. It's a great color for hardworking. People who put in that sweat to get what it is that they need. So if you know somebody who's very hardworking and doesn't mind working with their hands and doing labor, brown might be a good color to associate with that person. The next color is gold. And the first thing you're going to think about is maybe wedding rings, representing the relationship. It could be the crown of a king or queen. It could be a chalice in a church, or it could be a gold medal award or trophy. So gold is going to be associated with getting the top of what it is in your profession, being the best of the best, the very pinnacle of what it is that you do. It can be that representation of, a relationship and a commitment that's lifelong. It can be, you are the leader of the country, you're the leader of your group, that you have that kind of royalty. Or it could be the matriarch or patriarch of the family, the great-grandfather, great-grandmother, who everybody seeks for advice. There's something special and golden about that person, so maybe gold is the color you would use to represent them. So those would be kind of the emotional values and the associations of gold. A step down from gold is going to be silver. And silver is kind of the common man currency. So it's the idea of coinage and coins. or skyscrapers, using a lot of metal to kind of build these futuristic buildings. It can be the color of labor and tools and nails and rivets, kind of pulling things together. Engines. It's the color of technology when you think about wires. So if somebody is very techy, silver might be a good color for them. Emotionally, it's forward thinking. It is technology driven. It is cutting edge. Somebody who's always looking for something new, or maybe a really smart person who's smart with their money. And able to kind of invest that money. So it's not kind of the labor end of it, it's kind of more of the thinking end of it. So it's the person who's kind of working in that cerebral sense as opposed to that muscular sense. Then we can think about these colors and combinations and how they might represent us. If you look at the clothing you're wearing right now, do those emotional values tie into what you're wearing? Sometimes you pick colors in the morning that represent how you feel for that day. It'd be interesting to kind of look at that. But let's turn back to our shape. If you can open your workbook to that page where you drew the shape, I'd like you to color that in now, maybe even adding some patterns or some lines that you can, or shapes within the shape. And color in the shape in the way that represents who you are as a person, so it gives you a little bit more detail. Here's my shape colored in, and you can see that I added blue to the shape to represent that I'm generally calm. I'm not a yeller. I put yellow in there because I'm looking for the positive in people. I tend to see the best things about them. And then I included these polka dots of blue and yellow throughout the shape to represent my sense of humor. The students who have me in class know that I joke around quite a bit. So instead of yelling at students, I'll make a joke which kind of gets them back in line. So that's another way I help kind of control my class, is through humor. I've got green in there to represent that I help my students grow, but also I myself am growing. Even learning how to do the program that makes this video, that took me a while to do. I had to sit down, watch a lot of videos to learn how to make a video and get a green screen and put images on there. That took some time, so I had to learn how to do that. And then the last color I have is brown on the bottom of my shape, representing the hard work I put in. It takes a lot of time to teach. It takes a lot of time to write a book. It takes a lot of time to create works of art. So I'm a hardworking person, so I use brown in my shape. So what colors would you put into your shape? Again, you can pause this video and then we'll continue in another second to finish this up. So here I have a picture that is a bunch of shapes on a background. And if I told you that the shapes that you see here are representing members of a family, you might be able to make some ideas and understand what these different shapes might mean. How some shapes that are a little sharper might be more aggressive personalities. Shapes that are a little bit more round are kind of softer personalities. And the colors that are between the shapes are representing how those people get along. So when you see red or orange between a couple of shapes, you know those people have some issues that they're dealing with. There's going to be anger in those family issues. And the yellows and the blues and greens are areas that are stronger, where people are getting along, or maybe one's helping the other one along. So in your workbook, if you turn the page again, there's a list there where you can write down 8 to 10 family members, people who are living with you. And you can include some extended family, but I do want it to be family. Up to 10, but no more or no less than 8. And next to each name, I'd like you to write down 3 or 4 words that kind of describe their emotional values, like how you perceive them to be. And it is okay to include people who have passed away. Maybe you need to talk to your parents if it was a great-grandparent who passed away, but you still hear a lot about them. What are the words that would describe them? And then in the margin of the page, there's space to make the different shapes, very simple ones as a sketch version, to represent that person. I want you to avoid using pets like, fish or dogs. I know they have a lot of personality, but I'd really like this to be about people. And then if you have a very small family, maybe it's just you, your mom, and your dad, then you can start adding extended family and perhaps friends. But talk to your teacher about that. And then we can create an actual work of art that is completely abstract but represents the family unit. Nobody's going to know what these colors and shapes mean when you show it to your family, but you will know as you create it that the colors and the shapes are representing the people's emotional values and how you see them. And it becomes an interesting abstract work of art. We don't have to draw things as they actually are. We can draw them the way we feel they are. And that's one of the greatest things about art.